Hello, all of my Star Pupils, and welcome back to the channel. I am so glad to finally be putting this video up for you guys. It is about the retrogrades and what is a retrograde in astrology, things of that nature. I've been wanting to do this video for a long time to kind of close out the astrology series a little bit, and to kind of give you guys some idea of what a retrograde is and things of that nature, because it is a very big part of astrology. But also, I will still be doing the birthday videos. I'm still going to do that for each zodiac sign because I think it helps you guys a lot to know more about your own zodiac sign and everyone else. So we're going to jump right into this video on retrogrades. So I wanted to do this for a while because retrogrades, I feel, in astrology are very important. A lot of times, and I want to make this disclaimer to you guys too, you will probably hear that retrogrades are very negative in astrology. And I personally don't think that that is always true. So in this class, what I want to talk about is what are retrogrades, how can you get through a retrograde season, how does it affect your chart, what are some things that you can take away from it knowing about astrology a little bit more in depth, and what actually a retrograde is. So the first thing I do want to mention is that if you are looking into retrogrades, basically what that means, and I'm going to be using some notes a little bit just to kind of guide you guys if you are watching this video. I want each of you to think of a retrograde not in a negative connotation. So taking out the negative things that come along with retrogrades, or taking out that negative connotation, I want each and every one of you to kind of say to yourself, retrogrades are your friends. So what I want you to know is that every single time there is a retrograde with a planet, each of the planets have a retrograde, and this can be such an influential thing for some people, for you guys. If you have a retrograde and it's going through your chart, if you have something like that, consider it your friend, your best buddy, your bestie, your whoever you can think of to be that person for you. That is what a retrograde does. It is a positive impact. Sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you guys, retrogrades can hurt like hell. It's a pain sometimes to go through them because there's a lot of things that happen, and I will get to that in this video. But for the sake of it, just think of retrogrades as being a lesson, being your friend, being something that kind of shifts your mentality, your emotional or spiritual way to get you towards another place. So just kind of think of it like that. The actual definition for a retrograde, what that basically means is that it's moving backward, or it's transitioning to a different moment in time. So what happens in astrology is that in astrology, retrogrades are taken into a negative connotation because basically the planet is moving back or moving closer to the sun than it has been in a while. So each different planet has different transitions that go into retrograde that only happen certain amounts of times in a year. This is not a situation where every planet is always in retrograde, because obviously that would be too much on a person, and that does not always happen all the time. But just kind of think of it that way, that it's moving backwards, it's going back to something, or almost like a lesson of some kind is coming back to you. That's why a lot of spiritual leaders will kind of say, oh, you know, if your planets are going into retrograde, it means that something is coming back to you. So that's kind of how you need to look at it too. A lesson can be unfolding. Something that you had manifested months and months ago is now coming back to you. So it all kind of works out in that sense when there is a retrograde. So to break this down a little bit, I talked to you guys about the planets. So there are different planets that do go retrograde on occasion. The only planets that really don't go retrograde is honestly the sun, because the sun is there in the placement, it stays there. You know, Earth isn't really considered anywhere in astrology, only because we as humans live on the 3D plane, and astrology is a higher type of science. So that's not going to mention the Earth because obviously we're all living on the Earth. So the planets that can go retrograde are the following. There's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all of those planets can go retrograde. So what's interesting about each of these planets is that when they do go retrograde, and if you guys are looking at your chart, if you're looking at anything to see kind of where the planets are going retrograde in this time, where some of your planets are in retrograde, basically what that means is that if you had a planet in your chart, I'm just going to make this simple, say that each one of you had Venus in retrograde. And you're going to see that in the Emphemeris, like I mentioned before, if you're looking up things about your chart, you're going to see a little R next to it. And what that means is that that specific planet in your placement is in the detriment. It's in a retrograde, meaning that it is coming back to you in this lifetime so you can learn lessons about that specific thing, that specific planet, whatever sign is in that planet placement, you can learn more about it. So say, for example, you had Venus in retrograde and you have Venus in Taurus. So you might be learning, you are learning about how to maybe manage money better, how to manage, you know, the sensual pleasures of life better, how to manage your work ethic, your money, anything having to do with any type of fruitions of money might be coming back to you. Granted, it's in the retrograde, but those are the bigger lessons that you would have to learn at that time. So going back to the planets, so Mercury, when Mercury is in retrograde, that has to do with communication, thoughts, any type of introspection, which is why everybody states, especially astrologers, that Mercury in retrograde is the toughest retrograde. Because when that happens or when that occurs, a lot of times the stuff that comes back to us during a retrograde in Mercury has to do with communication, has to do with some things that we've left unattended or have kind of festered under the surface because we haven't communicated about the issues. A lot of times they will say not to communicate through computers, not to communicate through social media, all those type of things, because you get a lot of glitches. You may have a lot of issues with communicating properly to someone else. Your thoughts may become jumbled. You have a lot of introspection. And I think that for Mercury in retrograde, it's important to know that at that time, you don't really need to communicate. It's kind of telling you for retrogrades to step back from that and to not move forward or communicate. Venus, again, we talked about this. So Venus planet is the feminine energy or the feminine divine energy of the zodiac or of the astrology that we talk about. So with Venus, you're talking about love energy, you're talking about the attention of love, you're talking about any type of money flow, abundance, things like that. So if you're having a Venus in retrograde, then that probably means that you're dealing with those issues about money flow, abundance, maybe something that you manifested didn't come to fruition or didn't come to light, but now you're learning a lesson about taking a different path or moving forward. So Venus sometimes, a lot of times, also helps with relationships. If you're going through relationship problems and you feel that, you know, you were manifesting something different or trying to get, you know, an eye opener about that, maybe with your third eye chakra, you wanted to see kind of different things or meditate on that. Now it's coming back to you and showing you something different. That's also part of a Venus retrograde so that you can move forward on a different path, because that's really, you guys, what astrology is. It's moving you towards a different path. It's giving you information about yourself so you can move forward with things, so you can kind of figure out where you're at. Retrogrades kind of help with the same process because you are learning about different things, and then when it comes back to you, you're able to deal with it a little bit better. There's also Mars in retrograde. So Mars in retrograde has to do with anger, drive, self-assertion. A lot of times during the Mars in retrograde, you will seem to find that if you have a planet placement in that, or if you have anything of that nature, you're very not driven. You're very sluggish. You can't really get out of bed. You don't have any self-exertion to actually do anything. A lot of times those retrogrades make you become even more introspective because you don't want to move quickly to something and then regret your decisions on it, or it makes you less likely to act quickly in regards to that when there is a retrograde. Or it can do the opposite effect. It can make you act extremely irrational at times, or you may be thinking, I really want to talk to this, I really want to get this underway, And you may be stumbling over yourself when you're trying to communicate this, when you're trying to move forward. It's all about action. And sometimes these retrogrades kind of tell you, don't take any action, move back, take a step back. So that's very important to know or to write down if you're trying to figure out where that placement is in your chart. You know, if you are going through a Mars retrograde, like, it's best not to talk about very big issues at that time, like wait on it, move forward in a different way, get some time alone by yourself for some introspection. Now, I will mention this. Those planets, the Mercury, Venus, Mars, those type of things, those planets are very, very prevalent planets. They are what we like to call part of the inner planets. Now, the inner planets also are Jupiter and Saturn, but both of these planets do go into retrograde less frequently because we're talking about basic science here. The two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, do not always orbit the sun so close at any type of point in the year. So it is very rare that those go into retrograde, but a lot of times it has the adverse effect on people. Some people may have really, really huge issues happen during Jupiter or Saturn retrograde, or you might not notice it that much because it might not be as prevalent in your chart or a lesson that you need to learn or things of that nature, which is why I would suggest for the Star Pupils, you guys definitely get an Emphemeris book. I've linked links down below just in case you do need to find one of those. But if you do look next to anything in your Emphemeris or anything in your chart and you see it's in the retrograde, that's always something to look at too. If your Jupiter or Saturn is in retrograde, then chances are when those retrogrades happen with the Jupiter or Saturn, you will feel it more than maybe someone else who wouldn't have that placement in their chart. So for Jupiter, we're talking about luck and abundance. Jupiter kind of rules that whole lucky streak. So if you put an investment in and you're hoping that something will happen, and then there's a Jupiter retrograde and things fall through, or on the flip side, you might have put in for that investment and then your luck turns around during the Jupiter retrograde too. It's happened both ways. Saturn, of course, is the lesson giver, and that is karma. That's karmic realizations. That's karmic relationships. That's things that are happening. So if Saturn is in the retrograde at that time, then that means that the karmic lessons of what's going on is currently failing and that you would need to do something else. Or it presents a whole other lack of karma that you may need to work through or you may need to have. So that's a big thing about Saturn in the retrograde as well. I did want to also mention too that those type of things with Jupiter and Saturn, it means that it's less challenging. There are smaller things within those placements that need to be tweaked. So again, if you are witnessing a Jupiter or Saturn retrograde, just understand that it's not going to be as prevalent perhaps. Again, unless you have the retrograde in your chart, or it's not going to be as prevalent as the Mercury, Mars, and Venus retrogrades. So just keep that in mind. There's also Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So Uranus would be grouped in with the Jupiter and Saturn. It's less likely to happen most of the time. And Uranus is about surprises, innovation, and liberation. Now, what's interesting is that the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that occurs in the retrograde that happens in the universe, those are the outer planets. So those have to do with the groups of people, society, political, economic structures, social structures, injustices, things like that. So if there is a retrograde going on in any of those three planets, the Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, basically what that means is that you're not only going to be feeling it personally, but you're going to be feeling it on a larger scale. So socially, economically, politically, you may be having a really, really bad week during a Uranus, Pluto, or Neptune retrograde. But the truth is you might be reading the news and seeing that a lot of things are going on. There's a lot of negativity being surfaced. So sometimes that also doesn't just stretch out to yourself spiritually. It stretches out to the universe and to the world as well. So that's another thing to think of. Neptune and Pluto in retrograde, those only happen about 40% of the time. Even throughout the years, they only happen about 40% of the time. So again, because they are outer planets, it's not going to be of the detriment or really something that needs to be thought of when you're going through the process of the retrogrades. And again, Neptune and Pluto, it's all about the spiritual. It's all about, the introspection, Pluto with the mystery, the mysterious planet, everything under the surface with Pluto. So you're going to be getting a lot of spiritual awakenings, a lot of spiritual things happening. Maybe a lot of you who are mediumship or psychic or in tune, you may during those retrogrades sense a lot of spirits around you. You may sense a lot of in tune things happening, a lot of synchronicities. Sometimes you might be getting, different messages from the divine and you're trying to understand what they mean. That type of thing through the retrogrades. And oftentimes it does come in the signs and synchronicities and looking forward to trying to figure out what are you going to do during that retrograde, or sometimes things will come out of nowhere and you'll be feeling, well, why did it come out of nowhere when I was not expecting that? And that is what is part of the retrogrades. Things will happen that may be negative or not the best. You might not be feeling the best during retrogrades. So things will be coming back to you, lessons that you would have to learn in the future. So now that we've talked a little bit about the retrogrades, you're probably wondering, well, what should I do if I go through a retrograde period? What is the best thing I can do to spiritually and mentally help myself during these difficult times? So if you are going through a Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde, the biggest thing that you can do is give yourself the time that you need to sit, to meditate. Meditate and, manifesting are great ways during retrograde season to kind of figure out what you're doing spiritually, what you're doing emotionally, what is working for you and what isn't. So those two tools, if you sit down and actually make out a list of what you want to manifest or what is not going right in your life that you need to fix, say that you just lost your job during a retrograde. What are the things that you're going to do to try to obtain a new job? Do you want to take a different direction in maybe a business or in a different venture than what you weren't thinking before? So definitely taking that time to meditate and to manifest during a Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde is also extremely helpful. The other thing that I'm going to mention too for those retrogrades, for the Mercury, Venus, and Mars, is that definitely do not take any action on anything. If you're feeling very stuck, or if you're feeling that you can't communicate with others, if you're feeling that you have nobody to talk to, reach out to a family member, a friend, somebody in the community who you're close with to kind of talk about things. Don't approach something or don't approach the issue during a retrograde season where you feel like things are not going to be addressed properly, or you feel like you're all scrambled inside, because especially with the Mercury in retrograde, you're feeling less likely correct to communicate, and things you may say might not come out right. So it's just best to take a step back, take the time that you need for self-care, and to understand that you need this time during this retrograde season to kind of take a step back, relax, take a breath. Don't feel like you always have to constantly be doing things or constantly putting yourself out there all the time, especially during those hard retrograde seasons where you just need to take the rest. You just need to, step back. A lot of, my star pupils might be YouTubers or on social media or things like that. Don't feel the need that you have to post a video if you're just not feeling right about the situation or what kind of content you want to put out, especially during Mercury retrogrades. For Venus retrogrades, if you're having problems with relationships, take that time to kind of step back and say, okay, this is okay. I need this time to figure things out. This is a great lesson for me, that type of thing. As far as the other retrogrades are concerned with the outer planets, especially Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, my suggestion would be that if you're having a lot of issues and you feel like there's so much negativity surrounding you with social media, with the news, with what you're seeing around, I'm not saying to bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, but what I am saying is that sometimes that can be very, very overloading. So if you feel like you're getting overloaded constantly, it's time to shut off the social media, shut off the news, shut off what you're seeing, especially during a retrograde season, and take a break. meditate, go somewhere for a walk, get out in nature. You know, nature is great for the spirit. Nature really helps us to get in touch with who we are as people, get in touch with, you know, calming down a little bit. A lot of my star pupils have pets. You know, spend some time with your pets, your children, spend some time with your husband or your wife or your significant other, your partner, whoever it may be. You know, take some time to love the people who are in your life too, especially during these retrograde seasons, because a lot of times with the retrogrades, you can feel like you're all over the place. You know, consult tarot cards if you need to, you know, definitely use crystals. I mean, you guys, I'm going to bring the crystal video out, I'm telling you, because I know that a lot of you have been trying to comment to me about the crystal videos. You want to know more about crystals. You want to know more about the whole situation with the tarot. So I'm going to definitely bring out a crystal video for all of you. I know that you've been requesting it and wanting it. So bring out some crystals. You know, my other thing is, especially during retrogrades, create a safe space. Create a safe space in your home where you can go to decompress. I mean, this is kind of like self-care 101, really. It has nothing to do really with astrology, but especially during these retrogrades, if you have altars in your home, if you're practicing, you know, go and spend some time in that space, in a sacred space in your home. It can only help you when you're dealing with the retrograde seasons. So those are a few things of what you can do through the process of retrogrades. Again, if you do want me to continue with retrogrades and maybe do like a practice chart for a second part of this video, please comment down below and subscribe and let me know if that's something that you guys are interested in. Again, because I'm trying to close out the astrology series so that we can kind of move to something else, but I'm definitely going to be doing still the birthday videos for you guys because I love those. But a couple of other things. I'm actually changing one of the spaces in my home so that I can definitely film some videos and things for you guys. I want to do more creative videos in the future. So again, if you're looking for those, definitely like, comment down below, or subscribe. And that concludes the retrograde videos. Again, if you guys have any questions, want to reach out to me, I do have the Instagram that I'm going to link up here of where it is actually. I'm gonna actually put that I do have the Instagram right here. I'll give you the name of what my name is so you guys can look for it. And again, as always, keep it starry, keep it light, keep it bright. And the other thing is, we want to keep it astro classy, all my star pupils out there. So if you want anything else, you know, definitely leave me comments. I'm always looking forward to that. And I hope that all of you guys have a wonderful day and a good rest of the week. Then I'll talk to you soon.